The next story I wanted to talk about, which I found quite insane actually, and I was really shocked when I saw that this was even a thing and that this was actually happening. But for those of you that don't know, Shein has opened its first store in Paris and people are rightfully angry about it. Now, why this really shocked me is because France, more than almost any country, any other country I know, normally is really against fast fashion and they put things in place to make sure that fast fashion brands can't thrive in France. Like France has always been a country that I've always deemed really tough on fast fashion compared to Italy or the UK or the US. France is always that country that was like really tough. So when I saw that Shein was opening a flagship store, I was quite shocked because it's like, just how? Like, how did they do that? Like, how the hell did they do that? That's insane. And so, of course, people have been up in arms about it. People have been protesting. The first store is actually in the BHV Marais. I think they call it the BHV or however they pronounce it. The French people will correct me in the chat. But essentially, they launched in that department store, and in response, you have a lot of French labels that have removed their products from the department store in response to its partnership with Shein. You also have, French labels, like fashion labels also, removing their merchandise from the store in protest. Skincare owners removing their stuff from the stores in protest. So crazy, crazy scenes. I also think it's kind of dystopian, seeing France that's not supposed to be, it is the home of fashion. It's like the home of haute couture historically and in the present day. Some of the best fashion schools still are there, like IFM. The haute couture school is still there. So it's kind of shocking when you look at these two things side by side. It's insane. And I think something that really shocked me actually about this whole Shein issue is how many people were actually like queuing to go to it. Like so many people are looking forward to it. Like people were really like queuing up and lining up outside. I was quite shocked. But yeah, there's so many videos on TikTok that I wanted to show you guys of just like people doing the different protests and like people shouting and screaming at people like, why would you buy Shein and like all this kind of things. There were naked women who were protesting. Obviously, I won't show you that on YouTube. But yeah, there's a lot going on. So let's just like power through some of these TikToks so we can get some more like visual context. So let me play the opening clip first. I know, cheering is. But yeah, this was the queue that I was saying was really long, like a really long queue. I was like, what? Can someone explain this? I don't understand the appeal of Shein. It's horribly made clothing at insanely cheap prices, but the prices you can find, clothing that cheap secondhand. And if you just spent more money, you could buy better fast fashion like Uniqlo, like Zara, like H&M. That's still bad, but the quality is significantly better than Shein. So I just don't understand the frenzy around it, why people would literally queue for hours to shop at Shein. I just don't understand. It's speechless. Their clothes are like tuna. Yeah, it is truly depressing. It really, really is. But let's see some more clips about over the protests.
11 Oui, c'est comment là-haut?
She said magnifique. That's right. There is nothing significant or magnificent about a Shein sweater. There is no, like, magnifique and Shein, those are two words that should never be in the same conversation, like, ever. Like, those should never be mentioned side by side. Yeah, literally in line to buy plastic. I know some of the people that were in line, to be fair, were like journalists who just wanted to report on what was going on. So I know quite a few people in the lines were journalists, but then a lot of other people were genuinely there to like buy Shein. We know Shein is like one of the fastest growing brands in the world. So, when people talk about sustainability, blah, 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 they love sustainability and all that sort of stuff. We know it's not true. We know someone must be lying somewhere because that's just the case, right? But yeah, it's just dystopian is why I wanted to talk about it. It's like so insane. I thought France was the country that would never allow something like that to happen, right? Because also, Shein is quite literally going to decimate the fashion system. Like, we'll get to this later, but the reason why all these fast fashion brands are rebranding is because Shein has taken their market share. So now, because it's all about what consumers are used to paying. There was a point in time in the 70s where people would spend, you know, a week's wages on what was considered cheaper fashion, like designers. You had designers at the time like Bieber, who used to produce clothing that was really good quality, but was cheaper than a lot of the other brands. And people are used to spending more money, and people knew what quality was. So that was just the market. Now you have consumers that buy Shein and they're used to spending 11 euros on a sweater. So they think that's normal, not thinking of the supply chain and how a sweater can even cost 11 euros in the first place, right? So now that consumers are used to that, a lot of the, you know, fast fashion brands are now like the Zaras and the H&Ms. They're realizing, you know what, we actually need to rebrand, and we actually need to be more luxury and sit in a different part of the market, because we cannot compete with Shein. We just cannot compete with Shein. It's not possible. So that's kind of where fashion is going. And let me just show you guys some more clips of the store opening.
Vos achats, merci, on s'en fout, hein. Voilà ce qu'on fait au Marais. Et à d'acheteurs et acheteuses.
Et qu'est-ce que vous attendez alors, du moins cher?
Pratique que celles et ceux qui travaillent pour Shein sont payés.
Ils voient l'avion, ils prennent l'avion.
But someone said, I wouldn't make fun of people buying the clothes. I'll focus on the brand. More people do what they can and don't see how their mass consumption is part of how their lives are getting worse. I know, but so I don't 100% blame people, but I do blame people, because I have seen people online that say, I buy Shein because I can't afford anything. And we talk about this all the time. Like, it's such a flawed argument. It's such a flawed argument when, like, you can buy way better things at secondhand, or you could just spend slightly more money and buy like better fast fashion. Like I've said, Uniqlo, the Zaras, the H&M. Like, there's so many responses that I can give to that, which is why that argument doesn't make sense. So those are the people that I think about when I talk about, you know, consumers just not caring at all, like knowing what they're doing and still not caring. That's kind of what I'm referring to. But I also found this really good video on YouTube by a YouTuber called Ariel in Paris, who actually talked about the whole thing. So let's see what she has to say.
I was walking through the Marais, and from a distance, I could see these giant black flags and dark purple lights coming from the facade of the BHV, and it felt very sinister compared to the very festive decor in the shops and the department stores around the BHV. And as I got closer, I realized that I was right to feel a little bit uneasy, because these giant black flags were announcing the imminent arrival of Shein to the BHV in the heart of Paris. Hi you guys, it's Ariel. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about Shein, their very first physical retail store opening not only in France, but in the very center of Paris at the BHV. In today's video, I'm going to explain exactly what's happening, how we have come to this grand opening of Shein in not only France, but Paris. I want to talk about the media response, as well as the responses we've received from the Shein representative in France and the owner of the BHV. And then at the end of this video, I will hopefully take you to the opening of Shein, which is happening today at 1 p.m. I want to see...
Also, something I think is important to note, just to add a bit more context before we continue watching. So Shein, yes, they've opened this store and people are protesting, but they actually plan to open 5 more stores in regional cities like Dijon, Grenoble. Like there's quite a few other places that they're planning to open. So this is not just like a Paris only thing. They're trying to expand throughout France.
What it's like, what the shop looks like, the physical products, but I'm also very curious to know how the public is reacting. I would anticipate that there will be protests. There have been protests all the way up until today. And I think that there will be a lot of media coverage from the French news. Essentially, I want to take you out and I want to show you that. I'm hoping we can go in. I was reading on the door, like they have these stickers on the doors that say you have to get a ticket or something to go. So we'll see, but that is my hope for today's video. Now, before we get into it, I do just want to say that I hope you guys know me, and you know that my values don't align with Shein in any capacity. So I do have my own bias in reporting on this story. I am someone who truly values shopping local, shopping artisanal, shopping sustainable, and certainly shopping from companies and brands that value their workers, that pay a living wage, that have safe working conditions, and that create.
So I don't know this woman, I haven't watched her content, but it's very hard to like guarantee that you're doing that, right? Unless you know the supply chain of every single brand you buy, at which point, I don't even know how that's possible.
Products that are safe for the consumer. A lot of reports have come out sort of denouncing Shein in all of these capacities, whether it comes to unsafe or even inhuman working conditions, materials, clothing materials that have been tested to ultimately contain carcinogenic and toxic chemicals in them.
Yeah, we've covered this already. I did a whole expose on this. Even the fact that some people's packages came with like bugs, like cockroaches and stuff. Like they're literally importing insects with their products. Like it's insane. People have found blood on their products, which I can imagine is probably like maybe some of the workers who have been beaten and like they're bleeding and their blood goes on the clothing, or like their finger gets caught on something and there's no health and safety standards. But yet it's insane.
And of course, as Shein is this ultra fast fashion company, they are extremely detrimental to the environment. So I just will always prioritize quality over quantity. And actually in the pinned comment of this video, I am going to leave a couple stores around the BHV that I would recommend that you go into instead. I myself will be boycotting the BHV. Of course, I have to go in today to show the store, but I will no longer be shopping.
One thing I know this woman is not per se French, like in terms of like French sounding and stuff. But one thing I love about people in France is they fight for what they believe in. I really admire that about people in France. Like when French people revolt, they revolt. I don't even think in the UK people know what a revolt is. Like we've just been oppressed by the monarchy for millennia. No one cares. Like people just like, yeah, the king, God save the king. Like no one cares.
Here, I won't be going to the restaurants here. That's my decision. And if you feel similarly, then hopefully the resources I'll provide below can be helpful. But yeah, let's get into today's video. So on the 2nd of October, La Société des Magasins, or the Society of the Grand Stores, more commonly known as the SGM, announced that Shein would officially be opening their first physical retail store in the BHV. On the 31st of October, they announced that the opening date would be the 5th of November, so today, and that Shein would be occupying the entire 6th floor of this department store, which is 1,000 meters squared of shopping space, or I believe 10,800 square feet of shopping space dedicated to Shein. And this is only the first of many Shein stores that will be opening in France. SGM announced that there will be 7 other locations. We have them coming to Dijon, Reims, Grenoble, Angers, Le Mans, Orléans, and Limoges. Now there is a subtlety.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of they're actually expanding across France. It's not just a Paris thing for people that aren't aware.
The expansion of Shein across France. Initially, these 7 stores were intended to open in Galeries Lafayette in these different cities. However, from the get, Galeries Lafayette has been against Shein being brought to their department store. And the subtlety is that SGM owns the Galeries Lafayette buildings in these different cities. So from my understanding, SGM essentially pays to use the name and the likeness of Galeries Lafayette. But on the 4th of November, it was officially announced by Galeries Lafayette that they were ending this partnership and that all of these stores in these 7 different cities would have to change.
See, this is what I mean about French people. So the owners of the Galeries Lafayette license are willing to lose money because they don't want to tarnish their name. Like, this is what I mean about French people. Like, when they don't believe in something, they don't believe in it. Like money or no money, they don't believe in it.
their name from Lafayette to BHV, for example. I thought this was important to mention because up until literally yesterday, it was reported that Galeries Lafayette was welcoming Shein, and that really is not the case. So why did Shein choose to open their very first retail location in Paris? The answer is twofold. I think the first reason, and the most obvious reason that was given, is that Paris is the capital of fashion, and France in general is highly influential on the fashion ecosystem. And Shein has said that they want to be a part of this ecosystem, I think as well. And it's very obvious that...
What ecosystem could Shein possibly be a part of? Next, they're going to start showing runway shows, Paris Fashion Week.
Operating not only in Paris, but in one of the most historical and beautiful department stores at the very heart of the city lends a certain level of credibility to Shein, which they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, the second reason that Shein chose France is that...
To be very honest, do you know what the real impact of Shein going to France is? That I haven't seen, and I don't think she's going to talk about it, right? What I personally think is the real impact, and this goes back to, me talking about how luxury lost its luster. Like, when you read that book, just these luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, like Dior, like Chanel, when they started outsourcing to Turkey and China and, other places, Taiwan, when they started outsourcing, there were so many like craft houses that died because of it. And that's why I think that Chanel's métier is really important, but that's a whole conversation for another day. So a lot of these craftspeople go out of business the more brands and the more demand there is for people that want mass-produced products rather than handmade, handcrafted, slow-produced products. So Shein coming into France will create an ecosystem where Shein hires more people to work in an ecosystem of ultra-fast fashion, which takes money away from, these craft houses. It takes customers away from them. And over time, these craft houses just cease to exist because there's no demand for them anymore to produce anything, because all the brands that they used to produce for have either been pushed out of the country or they've been replaced by the likes of a Shein that has taken their market share. So to me, that's the real impact. That's why I think France should fight tooth and nail against Shein coming in, because I think when you think of France, as, the capital of fashion. And I think that Shein and its ultra fast fashion model is literally in complete contrast to that.
They have a huge customer base here. 1/3 of the French population shops at Shein. They have 25 million customers in France. Shein is the 5th most popular brand in this country, which honestly really surprised me. Now, there of course has been a lot of backlash, and you can see this especially not only with the protests, but in the interviews. Like, a lot of the time, news channels or reporters will host either the representative of Shein for France or the owner of the BHV, and they will ask them these hard-hitting questions and really push on all of the reasons why this is very controversial. And when it comes to the representative for Shein in France, he really pushes for this idea that Shein opening will be beneficial to the economic ecosystem in...
No, it won't be beneficial to the economic ecosystem. Obviously, it's a lie. He's just saying that because he's getting paid. But this is how it normally goes. You have a company like Shein that comes in, but Shein is actually a Chinese brand and Chinese company with majority Chinese interests. Meaning that when it no longer serves Shein to be in France, because it's not a French brand, and majority of their interests are not in France, they will dip and leave France to pick up the pieces, versus a crafts house that has been in France for 10 generations. They have every reason to want to stay in France and continue that legacy. So if you have Shein putting those companies out of business, long term, that's not good for the country. It's not going to help the economy of France, like they're claiming.
Paris, and really any city where Shein touches, he's very adamant that Shein will bring a lot of foot traffic, and this foot traffic is a younger, more connected, and international generation of shoppers. And what he says is that they will come downtown, they will come into the mall, they will do their shopping at Shein, and will have sort of this trickle-down effect on all the surrounding businesses who will benefit from all these consumers coming in.
That doesn't make any sense. If you go into Shein to buy an 11 euro sweater, you're not then going to dip into Jean Paul Gaultier to buy like a $100 fragrance. Like, that's not how it works. Like, it's not the same market. That's why when you have a department store, you have to align that's why different segments, like when you go into a department store, there's normally like a luxury section, or there's like a fast fashion section where the H&Ms and Zara's are, or there's a food court. The reason they do that is for what she's describing. If you go into Dior, you're also likely to go into Gucci. So it's the same customer that buys those brands. So they have to put them together so that there's a chance that there's like cross-pollination in terms of customer base. That's not going to happen when, you know, Shein, customers are going to buy Shein garments. They're not buying anything else. They're not.
There's this one story that he tells in all of his interviews about how when they did this pop-up in Dijon, this Shein pop-up, he actually had a local businessman come in and tell him that he was so grateful for Shein because thanks to the foot traffic, he was able to like surpass his monthly sales number. Now, this representative never spoke about other businesses. We have no idea who this business owner was, but he really does rely on this one interaction that he apparently had to sort of build his storytelling about how Shein will benefit businesses in France. Now, what about the BHV? What does the owner have to say? The owner's name is Frédéric Merlin, and just coming to you as Ariel, watching his interviews is hard. He comes off as extremely arrogant, extremely sure of himself, and I do think it's a little tone deaf to completely ignore all of the different issues people are raising about Shein coming to the BHV.
I'm really curious to know what he says about Shein coming to the BHV because it's a historic, you know, retail location, right? And I think that it does hold a sort of like reputation and cultural weight. And, you know, being okay with diluting that by having Shein have a store there doesn't make a lot of sense unless they've been paid out the wazoo, which is probably the case, because I don't see any other reason why you'd be willing to do that. But I'm curious to see the BS.
And to France. So it is a hard watch anytime I have to sit through his interviews, but he repeatedly defends working with Shein. He says he trusts the company, he trusts the products, and he says that
he trusts the company. Is this the same Shein we're talking about? Is this the same Shein that has ethical and supply chain concerns? The same Shein that has, you know, reports of workers being overworked, working long hours, the poor working conditions, the forced labor? Like the same Shein that they discovered childlike sex dolls to the point where the French authorities had to shut down the Shein marketplace. Is this the same Shein we're talking about that he claims he trusts?
he's trying to link the world of online shopping with in-person shopping. And what I thought was really interesting is that he sort of brings this arrival of Shein back to the roots of the BHV, because the BHV stands for the Bazar de l'Hôtel de Ville, which is the bazaar of the city hall. And to him, including Shein in their department store represents a new era of the bazaar, represents going back to what it was initially intended to be, a place where every type of Parisian could come to shop. That because Shein does have such accessibly priced pieces, a new clientele will feel welcome shopping in the BHV, and that is essentially what the bazaar represents, is inclusivity and catering to all forms of Parisians, which I think at its core is a very positive message.
I think people need to reevaluate what they mean by inclusivity. I think it's become a bit of a buzz term now. I don't know if you can say it's inclusive working with a brand that literally has human rights violations attached to its name. I don't get that.
I am all for inclusivity, but I don't think that you can scream and shout about inclusivity for French people at the expense of destroying the environment and very poor working conditions, very low quality garments. low quality and potentially toxic garments. So while I do completely agree with the messaging of being inclusive, I don't think that Shein and the products they offer is inherently inclusive because their prices are so low. I think that prices as low as Shein offers, obviously has to come at the expense of someone or something
Exactly.
in the supply chain. And to me, that's not true inclusivity. The owner of the BHV also relishes in the controversy that surrounds Shein coming to his department store. I'll put a picture or a video on screen that shows the giant poster that he put up at the front entrance of the BHV, which is a picture of him and the owner of Shein, and the text that's written says, "The poster we shouldn't have made." So he is acutely aware of the controversy surrounding Shein coming to the BHV, and he has said in interviews that playing into this controversy is a sales tactic for him. Now, 2 days before Shein was meant to open, so 2 days ago on the 3rd of November, Shein was hit with a pretty big controversy in France. It was reported that on their website, they were selling lifelike dolls of very, very young children.
Yeah, that's what I was referring
Girls
to earlier.
made of silicone whose target consumer is pedophiles. And we know that these dolls were or are intended for sexual use because of the description, which I'll put on screen and you can read yourself. And this was a huge scandal. Like, this is extremely dangerous, unethical, and people were very rightly concerned that a company that would sell this type of product on their platform is coming to France,
Exactly, which is why I don't even know. I know the guy has been paid off, but for him to say, "I trust Shein," is just so obtuse. And he knows it's obtuse. But even if you want to, just support it blindly because they've paid you out the wazoo, there's a better way to phrase it than say you trust Shein.
the BHV. And since this news broke, Shein has removed the doll from their website, or at least removed it being accessible to French consumers. I believe they have committed to giving the French authorities the names of all the people who purchased these dolls. And despite this controversy, the owner of BHV is still going forward with the launch date today. I will give the explanation that he shared because in his interview, he did say that he spoke with the owner of Shein. The owner of Shein was very apologetic. Of course, they have removed these dolls, that it was an error, that they're trying to increase the review process for items such as this being listed on their platform, because essentially Shein works in a way similar to Amazon, where people can, it's like a marketplace, so people can list products that they want to sell on Shein, and the products don't necessarily come from Shein itself. So that was the issue with this doll, is that another retailer posted this doll on the Shein website, and it slipped through the cracks, and it ended up for sale. Now, in terms of like quantifiable backlash against Shein coming to the BHV, there were, I believe, 12 brands who have decided to leave the BHV in protest.
Yep.
Disney also ended their partnership because Disney was supposed to do the
I talked about that earlier, that so many people in response left the department store.
holiday window display, so that's not happening anymore. And there is a petition that's been signed by over 110,000 French people against Shein coming to France and the BHV. So that's what I can say at the moment in terms of the backlash. I think we're all waiting to see, because this is either going to be extremely beneficial financially to the BHV this holiday season, or it could swing the other way and be completely detrimental to their brand, to their history, and to their own credibility. So we'll have to see. And I think the first way we can do that is by seeing what she looks like today on opening day.
It'll be good to get like her first-hand perspective of what it was like. Look at how many people are there.
So I took the line 1 to Hôtel de Ville, and as I got closer to the department store, you could see many people in line to go into Shein on one side, and many protesters and journalists on the other, separated by police and barricades. I took a spin around and realized that every single entrance had police protecting and controlling entry into the space and into the BHV itself.
Someone earlier said, I did learn a bit of an economics lesson. If people wonder why countries don't ban these companies, it's because China holds a lot of manufacturing power that they can take away. I mean, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But I don't think banning Shein is gonna cause like a trade war. I think it's gonna take more than that to cause like a trade war with China, to be fair.
Around
But
back,
you're
I found a
correct.
boutique called La Française opposite the BHV, which is proudly made in France and had opened a little pop-up in protest of Shein. I decided to hop in line, which was an experience in and of itself. From this side, I got to see the protesters and City Hall, and there were 2 banners hanging from the windows protesting Shein's arrival. After 47 minutes, I made it halfway, and the rest only took me 15. After a quick bag check, I collected my ticket and headed up to the 6th floor. As someone who's never
I just don't understand the appeal. I think that, honestly, us as human beings and consumerist culture has us absolutely cooked. It's like people would rather go to Shein and buy a billion outfits, most of them that they're not going to wear. Because I remember when I was growing up and I like got into fashion and I would like go to my friends' houses, especially like my female friends. I don't know why. I think women in general, because like I think for guys, I think what it is like for women, you can wear like a dress and like shoes or whatever, like a dress and heels. So a lot of my female friends just have loads of loads of dresses. At the time when I was younger, they would just have loads. Most of them they've never worn before. Whereas I think guys, you buy like shirts and trousers, so they're more like interchangeable in a way. But yeah, a lot of my female friends would just have like, they would ask me because I was like seen as the fashion person. They'll be like, what should I wear? Can you tell me what to wear? And then I go into their closet and I'm like, oh, you can wear this. They're like, I haven't worn that. And I'm like, why haven't you worn it? And they're like, oh, it's not my size. I'm like, why did you buy something that's not your size? They're like, because it was on sale. I'll like lose weight and then fit into it. And I'm like, okay, like, and that just shows you how cooked we are. Like, people just buy stuff they don't need. You do not need a trillion outfits. You should buy 3 or 4 good quality dresses, 3 or 4 good quality like sweaters, and you can, if you're stylish, you can change them constantly to where it's not the same outfit. And those garments last long, and then you can build on your wardrobe from there. So even the mentality is off key. Like the way I'm seeing people carrying loads of clothing, right? It's insane.
ordered clothing from Shein, I didn't really know what to expect, but holding the garments in my hands for the first time and seeing the materials used, I was honestly a bit surprised that so many people wanted to shop at Shein. I had just never in my life seen clothing of such poor quality.
Guys, I didn't say the women point to encourage sexism in the chat. That's not what we're doing. I was just talking about consumer behavior, because fashion is marketed towards women in a way that it isn't towards men. So it makes sense that more women would buy into clothing, which means that more women would like overconsume in that way. So yeah, that was the point I was making. Someone is asking, is H&M not of similar quality? No, H&M is not like fantastic quality, but it's significantly better than Shein. Like, it's significantly better. So yeah.
Nearly everything I looked at was made of polyester, polyamide, or acrylic, and honestly, I found the prices unreasonable for how terrible the quality was. Take this 100% polyester winter coat, for example, at 70 euros. This is 20 euros more than what I paid for my vintage wool and cashmere long coat.
And this is exactly why when people say I buy Shein because I can't afford anything else.
I think as well that it's quite jarring to go through all 6 levels of the BHV to get into Shein. I say this because from floors 0 to 5, you're drawn in by the warm lighting, the cozy atmosphere, the wooden and stylish shelving, the high quality products, and the visual merchandising that inspires creativity. And then you get to the 6th floor where the walls are painted black and the overhead lighting was fluorescent white. The clothes are on those cheap metal racks and all of the pieces are visibly of a lesser quality. I had anticipated that the Shein store would be on those cheap metal racks and all of the
Look at how bad. Oh my gosh.
pieces are visibly of a lesser quality. I had anticipated that the Shein store would follow the same decor and setup as the rest of the department store, and the reason for this is that I thought they would really play into the more luxurious feel of the BHV to gain
Sorry, I need to look at the stitching. Oh my god.
the department store,
look at the
and
stitching on the shoulder. Oh my god. Guys, look at how crooked the stitching is. It almost looks like a V. Look at how crooked the stitch is on that.
reason for this is that I thought they would really play into the more luxurious feel of the BHV to gain points in credibility, but I guess not. Well, that is an experience I hope I never have to repeat. Standing in line and being in the store was definitely really interesting because I got to hear all these different interviews that journalists were doing with people who were shopping or who were excited to shop at Shein.
Eric, so to respond, I would have thought Shein's prices are only possible through online shopping. Like, wouldn't having a store force them to double their prices in order to maintain their profit margin? Not necessarily, because the store is not, it's not a profit leader. Obviously, the online, shop fronts are what will make most of the money. However, I think retail spaces just help cement the validity of a brand, especially considering where they're putting it. I also think they can still make significant money from the stores. Think of it, bookstores still exist for a reason. Books are sold at, not that expensive prices. And Shein has coats that are 70 euros. They have pieces that are like 5 euros, but they also have like 100 euro pieces, right? So because so many people go in there with the intention of buying so many things, it's scale. They're just relying on scale to make all their money. So whereas a luxury brand has to sell like 1 or 2 items, Shein would need to sell like 100 or 200 items to be in the same position.
Shein, and every single interview they asked the exact same question, which was, why do you support Shein? Why, despite X, Y, and Z, do you still purchase at Shein? Or why don't you prioritize other brands or made in France? And the answer to this question was the same. Across the board, every single person brought up the cost of, the cost of living, but also the low cost of Shein products. And they kept saying, like, I'm not rich, and rich people should stop poo-pooing Shein because that's all I can afford.
See, that's the argument. That's always the argument. It's always, I can't afford anything else. Terrible argument. Terrible argument. Terrible argument.
And I have to say that I really don't agree with this line of thinking. Now, I'm not anti-consumer. Like, I'm a consumer myself. I do some shopping from time to time. But I think that saying you support Shein because it's cheaper than more ethical and higher quality brands isn't really an honest take. Because number one, you could very easily thrift pieces. You could use any of the secondhand apps like Vinted in Europe or Depop in the US.
So there's like layers of the excuses, right? So if I say, well, you can buy secondhand and you can go to a vintage shop, they'll say, well, there's no vintage shops in my area. And then I'm like, well, you're commenting in my YouTube live stream, meaning you have access to internet, meaning you have access to all the online secondhand shop fronts. I'm talking The Real, I'm talking Vinted, I'm talking Depop, I'm talking Grailed. You have access to that because you're commenting. So what's your excuse? And then that's when they don't have anything to say after that.
And you could find clothing at comparable or even cheaper prices that are much higher in quality and more ethically made. So even today, for example, I'm wearing a Shein cardigan, a Shein wool cardigan.
Also, FK, great point also. So this is another thing, right? Instead of buying 4 horrible quality dresses that will be unwearable after 3 washes each, you could just save all of that money that you spent on 4 and just buy 1 that's really good quality, and then that way that you can have that dress that lasts years, and then you save up, you buy another dress, and then in a year's time you have 4 really good quality dresses rather than 12 unusable ones. I don't know how people don't understand the logic, but
a Cézanne wool cardigan and a Monoprix silk and wool tank top, both of which I bought secondhand. And even if you've seen any of my Vinted haul videos, I recently purchased an haute couture Givenchy wool skirt, and I got that for 40 euros, which is the same price as a polyester cardigan from Shein. So for me, that's my first answer, is if you're looking for affordable, there are so many easy ways to access secondhand fashion. Like if you like the idea of having something be sent to you, use an app. If you like want to find unique pieces, go to a thrift store. And in Paris especially, there's markets, there's brocants, there's thrift stores. Like there is a number of ways that you can shop affordably without shopping it. Now, let's say you don't like shopping secondhand, you don't like to wear secondhand clothing. I still have other solutions for you, because you cannot convince me that ultimately, in the long run, it will actually be more affordable to buy disposable clothing from Shein versus spending a little bit more, buying something that's better made, higher quality materials that's going to last you years.
If you like new clothing, you can go to sample sales. Like we were just talking about the Row sample sale. Obviously, the Row is still expensive, but all the brands at all different levels do sample sales. Now, your excuse might be, I don't live in a major city where they do sample sales. Well, learn what a proxy is. That's like all these excuses that you can always like fix it if you actually care. Like you could just pay someone to go to the sample sale for you, not even a lot of money. Like some of these like young kids, like if you pay them, because it's how much of their time is it really? Like 1 hour max, 1 to 2 hours. You pay them 20 euros to ship it to you, to stand in line and buy these things on your behalf, and you can get really good quality things. So once again, even if you don't live in a city, there's ways. It's all excuses to me. It's all excuses.
Versus lasting you a couple days. And when you have to keep replacing the low quality clothes you buy off of Shein, then it is just going to be the same price, if not more. I want to say 99% of everything I own is thrifted. I think I was just really shocked because now that I finally come face to face with Shein clothing and I've seen the prices, which to me are unreasonable for the quality of garment, but I don't really understand why it's such a popular.
Yugi Nation, such a great point. Shopping is an addiction, so Shein is just preying on that weakness. Kind of like what drug lords do, same business model. Facts, totally agree. 10 out of 10, no comment.
Popular brand, why I waited an hour to get into this store. But yeah, I'd be very curious to know your thoughts down below in the comments. I hope this video was interesting for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great evening.
So yeah, great video, and that's kind of the whole story on... This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind the scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.